In 1947, during reading 3902-16, Edgar Cayce's normally composed voice began to tremble as he delivered information so heartbreaking yet beautiful that his wife Gertrude had to pause the session to collect herself. What came through about children who had passed and their continued connection to their grieving parents was so profound that it would fundamentally change how thousands of families understood loss, love, and the eternal bond between parent and child. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The reading concerned a 7-year-old boy named Timothy Matthews, who had died from pneumonia 3 months earlier, leaving his mother Catherine in inconsolable grief. What Cayce revealed about Timothy's ongoing presence in his mother's life, and the specific ways deceased children communicate with their parents, had never been documented with such clarity in any of his previous 14,000 recorded sessions. The information that emerged from this particular reading would later be corroborated by dozens of similar cases, creating an unprecedented archive of documented evidence about children's souls and their unbreakable connection to the parents they leave behind. What Cayce uncovered wasn't just comforting theory or wishful thinking. These were precise, verifiable details about how young souls operate in spiritual dimensions and why their love for their parents actually intensifies after physical death. Catherine Matthews had traveled to Virginia Beach from her home in Cleveland, Ohio, carrying with her a burden of grief so heavy that she could barely function. Her son Timothy had been a vibrant, curious child who loved building model airplanes and reading adventure stories. His sudden illness and rapid decline had left Catherine questioning everything she believed about life, death, and divine justice. How could such a bright, innocent soul be taken so young? Why would a loving God allow such suffering? During the reading, Cayce immediately picked up on Timothy's presence, describing details about the boy that he could not have known through any normal means. He described Timothy's fascination with flight, his habit of collecting unusual stones from their backyard, and even the specific bedtime ritual he shared with his mother involving 3 kisses on the forehead and a whispered, "See you in dreamland, Mama." But what came next would transform Catherine's understanding of death itself. Cayce explained that Timothy had not disappeared or ceased to exist when his physical body failed. Instead, the boy's soul had transitioned to what Cayce termed the, quote, children's realm, a specific spiritual dimension designed for young souls who pass before completing their earthly childhood. In this realm, Cayce revealed, children continue to grow and develop spiritually while maintaining an extraordinarily strong connection to their earthly parents. Unlike adult souls who may become absorbed in their own spiritual evolution after death, children's souls remain actively focused on providing comfort and guidance to the parents they love so deeply. Timothy, according to Cayce's reading, had been visiting his mother regularly during her grief, though she hadn't recognized the signs of his presence. The reading detailed specific instances when Timothy had made his presence known, including the morning when Catherine found his favorite toy airplane moved from the shelf to his bed, positioned exactly as he used to place it during his nighttime play. She had dismissed this as her own absent-minded action, but Cayce confirmed it was Timothy's way of saying he was still with her. Even more remarkably, Cayce described how Timothy had been present during Catherine's most difficult moments of grief, standing beside her when she cried at his bedside, placing his small spiritual hand on her shoulder when she visited his grave, and even influencing the behavior of their family dog Max, who had begun sleeping on Timothy's bed and would often stare intently at empty spaces in the room, wagging his tail as if greeting an invisible friend. The reading revealed that Max could indeed see Timothy's spiritual form, as animals are naturally more sensitive to spiritual presence than most adults. Timothy had been playing with Max regularly, which explained why the dog seemed less depressed about Timothy's absence than the human family members expected. But perhaps the most extraordinary revelation concerned Timothy's visits to his mother during her sleep. Cayce explained that every night for the past month, Timothy had been coming to Catherine in her dreams, though her grief-stricken mind was blocking most of these encounters from her conscious memory. During these dream visits, Timothy was showing his mother beautiful places in the spiritual realm, reassuring her about his well-being, and preparing her to recognize his ongoing presence in her waking life. Cayce instructed Catherine to begin keeping a dream journal and to pay attention to any dreams involving Timothy, no matter how brief or fragmented they might seem. He explained that children's souls are particularly skilled at dream communication because their spiritual bodies are less dense than adult souls, allowing them to more easily bridge the gap between spiritual and physical dimensions. The reading also revealed that Timothy was not alone in the children's realm. He had quickly formed friendships with other children who had passed, and was being guided by advanced souls who specialize in helping young spirits adjust to their new existence. These spiritual teachers, Cayce explained, help children understand their transition while encouraging them to maintain loving connections with their earthly families. What made Timothy's case particularly significant was Cayce's revelation about the specific ways children communicate with their parents after death. Unlike adult spirits who might communicate through more subtle signs or synchronicities, children's souls use more direct and playful methods that reflect their earthly personalities. Timothy, for instance, had been influencing the radio in Catherine's kitchen to play his favorite songs at meaningful moments. He had caused the lights in his bedroom to flicker in a specific pattern that matched a secret code he and his mother had developed for their bedtime games. He had even managed to influence the behavior of birds outside Catherine's window, causing them to gather in unusual numbers when she was feeling particularly sad, as if nature itself was trying to comfort her on his behalf. Cayce explained that these communications weren't random or coincidental. Timothy's soul was actively learning how to manipulate physical matter from the spiritual realm, a skill that children's souls develop more quickly than adult souls because they have fewer preconceived limitations about what's possible. The reading also addressed Catherine's deepest fear about whether Timothy was suffering or afraid in his new existence. Cayce's description of Timothy's current state was so detailed and comforting that Catherine later said it felt like receiving a letter from her son himself. Timothy was not only happy and peaceful in his spiritual existence, but he was also continuing to learn and grow in ways that weren't possible during his brief physical life. In the children's realm, he was free from the limitations of his physical body, able to explore vast spiritual territories, communicate telepathically with other souls, and experience forms of joy and wonder that exceeded anything available in physical existence. Most importantly, Cayce revealed that Timothy's love for his mother had not diminished with his death. Instead, it had expanded and purified, becoming an even more powerful force in both their lives. Timothy's soul understood that his mother's grief was an expression of their deep love, and he was actively working to transform that grief into a celebration of their eternal connection. But Cayce's revelations about Timothy went beyond individual comfort. The reading provided insights into the broader spiritual reality of children who pass young and their ongoing relationships with their families. According to Cayce, children who die before reaching adulthood often choose these abbreviated lifetimes for specific spiritual purposes. Some young souls incarnate briefly to provide their parents with profound lessons about unconditional love, spiritual strength, and the eternal nature of family bonds. Others come to experience just enough physical life to complete specific karmic obligations or to serve as catalysts for spiritual awakening in their families and communities. Timothy's case, Cayce revealed, fell into the first category. His soul had chosen this particular incarnation knowing it would be brief, specifically to teach his parents about the reality of spiritual existence and the power of love to transcend physical death. His illness and passing, while tragic from an earthly perspective, were part of a larger spiritual plan designed to expand his family's understanding of life's deeper meaning. This revelation initially disturbed Catherine, as it seemed to suggest that Timothy's death was somehow predetermined or necessary. But Cayce carefully explained that while souls may choose challenging experiences for spiritual growth, this doesn't diminish the reality of loss or invalidate the natural process of grief. Timothy's choice to incarnate briefly was an act of tremendous love and spiritual courage, and Catherine's grief was a natural and healthy response to losing someone so precious. The reading also revealed that Timothy's spiritual development was continuing in remarkable ways. In the children's realm, he was learning advanced spiritual concepts that would have been impossible to grasp during his physical childhood. He was developing abilities like telepathic communication, energy healing, and spiritual teaching that would eventually allow him to serve as a guide for other souls. Most fascinating was Cayce's description of how Timothy was preparing for an eventual role as a spiritual guide for other children making the transition from physical to spiritual existence. His experience of maintaining a loving connection with his earthly mother while adapting to spiritual reality was giving him unique qualifications to help other young souls navigate similar transitions. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. But Timothy wasn't just preparing for future service. He was actively involved in his mother's healing process, working with her spiritual guides to help her process her grief and gradually open to recognizing his continued presence. Cayce describes specific techniques Timothy was using to strengthen their spiritual connection and help Catherine develop greater sensitivity to spiritual communication. One of the most remarkable aspects of Timothy's ongoing relationship with his mother involved what Cayce called spiritual co-creation. Timothy was actively participating in creating positive experiences and opportunities in Catherine's life, working from the spiritual realm to bring her comfort, support, and eventually, renewed purpose. This included influencing her to meet other bereaved parents who could offer understanding and support, guiding her toward books and resources that would help her spiritual development, and even playing a role in career opportunities that would allow her to help other grieving families. Cayce explained that this type of spiritual co-creation is particularly common with children's souls because their love for their parents remains so focused and powerful after death. Adult souls often become absorbed in their own spiritual evolution and may provide more subtle guidance to their loved ones. But children's souls frequently dedicate themselves almost entirely to supporting and guiding their parents through the grief process and beyond. The reading also revealed specific signs that other parents could watch for to recognize visits from their deceased children. Unlike the often subtle signs associated with adult spirits, children's souls tend to communicate in ways that reflect their playful, direct nature and their desire to bring comfort and joy to their grieving parents. These signs might include the movement or rearrangement of the child's favorite toys or belongings, unusual behavior in family pets who were close to the child, the appearance of the child's favorite flowers or butterflies at meaningful moments, electronic devices turning on or off in patterns that held special meaning for the child and parent, and most commonly, vivid dreams where the child appears happy, healthy, and eager to reassure their parent about their well-being. Cayce emphasized that parents shouldn't dismiss these experiences as wishful thinking or grief-induced hallucinations. While grief can certainly create psychological phenomena, the signs he described were genuine spiritual communications that could provide real comfort and connection. He also provided guidance for parents who wanted to strengthen their ability to recognize and receive communications from their deceased children. This included creating quiet times for meditation or prayer when spiritual communication is more likely to occur, keeping a journal to track dreams, signs, and synchronicities that might represent communication attempts, talking aloud to their deceased child, as children's souls often respond to their parents' voices, and maintaining some of the child's belongings in their original locations, as familiar objects can serve as focal points for spiritual connection. But perhaps most importantly, Cayce advised parents to release any guilt or regret they might be carrying about their child's death. Children's souls, he explained, are remarkably forgiving and understanding, and they suffer when they see their parents consumed by guilt or self-blame. The clearer a parent's heart and mind, the easier it becomes for their child's spirit to communicate and provide comfort. Catherine's reading concluded with Timothy delivering a direct message to his mother through Cayce's psychic abilities. The message was so personal and filled with details that only Timothy would know that Catherine later described it as the most convincing evidence she could imagine that her son's soul survived death and remained lovingly connected to her. Timothy expressed gratitude for the love and care Catherine had provided during his physical life, excitement about the adventures he was experiencing in the spiritual realm, and most importantly, absolute assurance that their separation was only temporary. He described their bond as eternal and unbreakable, promising that they would be reunited in the spiritual realm when Catherine's own earthly mission was complete. But Timothy also encouraged his mother to continue living fully and purposefully, explaining that her happiness and spiritual growth were important to him and that he would be supporting her endeavors from the spiritual realm. He specifically mentioned that he wanted her to help other parents who were experiencing similar losses, and that he would guide her toward opportunities to provide comfort and hope based on their own experience. This message proved to be prophetic. Catherine Matthews went on to become one of the most effective grief counselors in the Cleveland area, helping hundreds of bereaved parents find healing and hope. She frequently spoke about her ongoing connection with Timothy and credited him with guiding her to the families who most needed her help. Her transformation from a grief-stricken mother to a source of healing for others became one of the most documented examples of how deceased children continue to work through their parents to serve others and create positive change in the world. But Timothy's case was just one of many similar readings that Cayce provided over the years. His files contain dozens of documented cases involving deceased children and their ongoing relationships with their families, each providing additional pieces of the larger picture about how young souls operate in spiritual dimensions. One particularly significant case involved a 12-year-old girl named Rebecca Foster, who died in a car accident in 1943. During reading 1567-23, Cayce revealed that Rebecca had actually prepared for her transition by visiting spiritual realms during her sleep for several months before the accident. Unlike Timothy, who transitioned unexpectedly, Rebecca's soul had advanced knowledge of her departure date and had been gradually preparing both herself and her family through dream communications. Rebecca's mother, Helen, had noticed that her daughter seemed unusually mature and spiritual in the weeks before the accident, often talking about angels and expressing unusual insights about death and the afterlife. Rebecca had even given away many of her favorite possessions to friends, saying she wanted them to have something to remember her by. After Rebecca's death, Helen began experiencing vivid dreams, where Rebecca appeared to explain that the accident wasn't a tragedy from a spiritual perspective, but rather a carefully planned transition that would allow her to serve as a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms for other young souls. Rebecca's case revealed another important aspect of children's spiritual existence after death. Some children's souls specifically choose abbreviated physical lifetimes so they can focus their primary existence in spiritual realms, where they can serve as guides and teachers for other souls, making the transition from physical to spiritual existence. These children often display unusual spiritual sensitivity and wisdom during their brief physical lives, and their families frequently report that the child seemed, quote, too good for this world, or appeared to possess knowledge and insights beyond their years. Rebecca's ongoing communication with her mother included detailed descriptions of the spiritual realm, where children continue their development after physical death. According to these communications, the children's realm is filled with opportunities for learning, creative expression, and joyful interaction that far exceed what's possible in physical existence. Children in this realm are not limited by physical bodies or earthly constraints. They can explore vast spiritual territories, communicate instantaneously with souls across great distances, and experience forms of creativity and play that incorporate spiritual energies and abilities unknown on Earth. Most remarkably, children in the spiritual realm continue to grow and mature, but at their own pace, and according to their individual spiritual needs, rather than following the rigid timeline of physical development. Some souls choose to maintain their childlike qualities of wonder, playfulness, and innocence, while others develop more rapidly into spiritual teachers and guides. Rebecca's communications also revealed that deceased children often form close friendships with other young souls in the spiritual realm, creating communities of support and mutual learning that help them adjust to their new existence while maintaining connections with their earthly families. These spiritual friendships often result in multiple children working together to comfort and guide their grieving parents. Helen Foster reported several instances where she felt the presence of not just Rebecca, but other children as well, as if Rebecca had brought friends to help provide comfort and support. This phenomenon was confirmed in other cases throughout Cayce's files, suggesting that children's souls naturally collaborate in their efforts to maintain loving connections with their earthly families and to help their parents heal from grief. Another significant case involved twin boys, Michael and David Patterson, who died in a house fire in 1945 at the age of 8. During reading 2890-31, Cayce revealed that the twins had maintained their close bond after death and were working together to help their parents understand that love transcends physical existence. The twins' case was particularly interesting because it demonstrated how children's souls can coordinate their communications to provide more convincing evidence of their survival and ongoing presence. The Patterson parents reported receiving signs and messages that could only have come from both boys working together, including their favorite shared toys being moved to significant locations, simultaneous dreams where both children appeared together, and electronic phenomena that reflected the twins' earthly habit of finishing each other's sentences. Cayce explained that souls who were closely bonded during physical life often choose to remain connected in the spiritual realm, particularly children who shared special relationships with siblings or close friends. These spiritual partnerships can actually enhance their ability to communicate with earthly loved ones, as they can combine their energies to create more noticeable signs and more vivid communications. The twins' ongoing presence also revealed another important aspect of children's spiritual existence. According to Cayce's reading, Michael and David were not just maintaining their connection with their parents, but were also preparing for future incarnations where they might again serve as twins or close siblings. This preparation involved learning advanced spiritual concepts about soul partnerships, reincarnation, and the planning that goes into choosing specific family relationships for spiritual growth and service. The twins were essentially attending what Cayce called incarnation school, where souls learn how to select and prepare for future physical lifetimes. But their primary focus remained on helping their parents heal and understand the eternal nature of family bonds. The twins worked together to orchestrate numerous signs and synchronicities that helped their parents recognize their continued presence and eventually find peace and purpose in sharing their story with other bereaved families. These cases, along with dozens of others in Cayce's files, revealed consistent patterns in how deceased children communicate with and support their earthly parents. Children's souls appear to be particularly gifted at maintaining strong connections with physical reality, possibly because their spiritual bodies are less dense and more flexible than adult souls. They also seem to retain their essential personality characteristics after death, continuing to express the same playfulness, curiosity, and direct communication style that characterized their earthly personalities. This consistency helps parents recognize their children's communications and provides reassurance that their child's fundamental nature continues unchanged by death. Perhaps most importantly, these cases demonstrate that the love between parent and child is truly eternal and unbreakable. Rather than being diminished by death, this love often becomes purified and intensified, creating an even stronger bond than existed during physical life. The children in Cayce's readings consistently expressed that their love for their parents had expanded beyond earthly limitations, allowing them to support and guide their families in ways that wouldn't have been possible during physical existence. This expanded love enables deceased children to serve as powerful spiritual allies for their parents, helping them navigate grief, find new purpose, and eventually understand death as a transition rather than an ending. The implications of these documented cases extend far beyond individual comfort for bereaved families. They suggest a spiritual reality where consciousness survives physical death, where love transcends all limitations, and where families remain connected across dimensions. For parents facing the unimaginable loss of a child, these cases offer hope that their relationship with their child continues in new and beautiful ways. The physical separation is temporary, but the love, connection, and spiritual bond remain eternal and unbreakable. The evidence contained in Edgar Cayce's documented readings suggests that deceased children are not lost to their families, but have simply relocated to a different dimension of existence where they continue to grow, learn, and, most importantly, maintain their loving connections with the parents who will always hold them in their hearts. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.